Hello, I'm Bob the Bookerer, coming to you from a slightly different location. For some of you, you may worry, you may think, is he in a police cell? Is he in jail? Where is he? I'm just in a meeting room just off where I am in my office, mostly because timing is sort of a thing. And so as a result, I won't be able to, if I get back home super late and try and record this, it will be incredibly dark and miserable. So instead you're getting some nice artificial light here as opposed to me squinting at a ring light and hoping for the best. There we go. Anyway, I wanted to just react to the Women's Prize Longlist coming out. And so the Women's Prize is a prize that I follow, normally just the shortlist really. I read the shortlist, at least have done for the last few years, and that's kind of my plan around this one. But what I typically do as well is sort of cherry pick a few other ones that sound exciting from the long list if they don't make the shortlist, and just sort of go that way. And last year, I think it was last year, that was the case for Nothing But Blue Sky, which I absolutely loved. And it didn't make the shortlist, unfortunately, but I still think it was a beautiful book nonetheless. And that's what's happening here. I am not going to go into detail about every single book that is on this long list, partly because there are 16 and you know, but also because other people have done them much better and there is no point replicating that kind of thing. So instead I will politely request that you go and check out someone like Eric Carl Anderson's video going through the 16 books. I found that really useful myself. Really interesting to hear about all of those books that are out there. But here is me just sort of reacting a little bit and giving some of my first initial thoughts to the long list. So first, I think the main thing to say, and I think everybody's been saying pretty much the same thing, this is a bit of an unexpected long list in some ways, which is always exciting. I think this is the thing that, without sort of sounding a bit like about it all, I think this was a thing that came up last year with the Booker Prize. The Booker long list came out, lots of people said, well, I've not heard of most of these, it must be rubbish. And actually, that was one of the most exciting things about it. There were books on that list that I don't think I would have ever ended up reading had it not been for the Booker long list having put them up. And, you know, so in some ways it's quite exciting when the quote unquote expected books don't make a long list or a short list or what have you. And I think that's exactly the case here as well. There are a few books on this list that I've been thinking about reading and been kind of eyeing up. So Ruth Ozeki's book I'd been looking at and had been sort of a little bit quietly interested from the side about. I've not read any of her work before, but thought it sounded really interesting. I had been, there are a few of them on the list that I had already read. So Leonie Ross's book, this one, Sky Day, which I really enjoyed and thought was just a really fun, inventive, imaginative book. So delighted that this book is getting a little bit of extra love here on the Women's Prize long list. I think it deserves it. I think it's really great to see a book that is a bit more experimental and a bit more out there being on sort of a list like this and kind of getting that extra sort of attention. The other two I've read, this is where I forget entirely that I've read books. Maggie Shipstead's Great Circle, which was on the Booker shortlist last year, which I really enjoyed. I thought this was such a beautiful, warm, clever book. A good old 500-page chunker, and that's something to say about this long list. This long list is full of quite a few longer books. You know, a few books sort of pushing 300, 400, 500 pages in some cases, which is exciting if you've got time to read all of them. If you've not, maybe it feels a bit more intimidating, but this seems like a really solid list, I think, based off that. And the other one, what other one have I read? I'm sure I read another book on this list. Who knows? Elif Shafak's book, The Island of Missing Trees, which I really enjoyed. I love her writing from the two books I've read of her so far. Her style is so generous and warm and open and loving. There's a real sort of oral folk tale kind of feel to her writing, which I really enjoy. So delighted to see that those three books I've read have made it. And really delighted to see so many other exciting books. And I'm just going to sort of do a quick rundown of some of the ones I'm really excited for. First up, The Sentence by Louise Erdrich. a book that I've been planning or hoping to read at some point. I've still never read anything by her, and she's quite an established author compared to some of this list who are maybe a few more debut authors or a few authors who have been, you know, a bit less well known. Meg Mason's Sorrow and Bliss is something that I've kind of had on my periphery for quite a while and have been really quite intrigued by. And I think some of the other books on this just sound really interesting. The Exhibitionist, I think, sounds like my kind of jam, like a bit of a dark and funny book, I think is very much, you know, what I love. But it's also intriguing to see a few books that I kind of just assumed would be on this, just not be on it. So I think particularly this is where I always get the title of this book wrong, The Love Songs of W.E. Du Bois, which I was hoping to read really soon and is not on this list. Something like Hanya Yanagihara's To Paradise, which I thought might have a good shout as well. But, you know, 16 books, which is a long list anyhow, can only cover so much of the sheer amount of books that go out and are published each year, of especially, you know, super high quality stuff. And I feel like this list covers a broad range of all of that. You know, you've got some sort of books that feel, you know, that are sort of slightly more on the side of young adult, potentially, some sort of more literary fiction, some a bit more genre. It's kind of a bit of everything, and I think that's really exciting. Sorry, because of the angle, I realised you're just sort of seeing, you're used to seeing hands kind of up here, instead you're getting little kind of flickers of hands, like as a little like neck fan. So that's what I'm doing. And anybody walking past this office will wonder what on earth is going on with this man. And they would be right, that is a fair concern. Anyway, one of the other books, this one should almost come as no surprise that I'm excited for this, Salt Lick, which seems to involve cows and sort of things from their perspective to some degree. I'm fascinated by the idea of this. This sounds so up my alley. If it's not what I think it's going to be, I might be a little bit disappointed. But, you know, anything involving animals or kind of nature seems to be my thing. So let's see. But overall, I think this looks like a really exciting long list. I realise I'm sort of full of a lot of enthusiasm and positivity about most book things anyway, so maybe this is no surprise. But I do sort of think it's worth saying that just because your favourite is not in a long list does not diminish the book, does not diminish the prize, but nonetheless is kind of an exciting thing. I think we should be reframing this a little bit and seeing that I'm still in work mode, you can see, right? But I think we should be seeing it instead of, you know, I've read none of these books, I've only read 3 or I've only heard of X amount. I think it should be a little bit more on the side of how great is it that we get to experience and be introduced to all of these other books that we'd never heard of before. And in this case, I think hopefully I'll find a few new favourites for this year and have a chance to read them. Anyway, which of this list are you excited about? Do you have any sort of general thoughts on this year's Women's Prize? My plans, as I mentioned, are going to be to just read the shortlist and then sort of cherry pick some other bits. And I'm excited to see what does make the shortlist from this, especially because there are quite a few chunkers in this. So if it is all just like 500-page books in the shortlist, I might cry a little bit just because there's a lot. I've got a lot to try and read this year. But at the same time, very exciting, because sometimes those big 500-page chunkers are beautiful, fascinating books that really take you somewhere. So let's see. Intrigued to hear your thoughts. Do, as I mentioned, check out Eric Carl Anderson's video. I think he does a pretty brilliant job of describing a little bit about all 16 books, and I am not going to attempt to ape that just because I think he does such a brilliant job of it. It's just well worth just checking out his instead. I've been Bob the Bookerer, talking about the Women's Prize long list. Thank you and take care. See you all soon. Bye. Right, back to emails.